You're listening to The Tom Daniel Show, and I'm your host, Tom Daniel. Hey, let me start today with a pretty simple question. Why is music so hard to learn, but yet so easy to enjoy? I mean, you can sit back and listen to a song without any musical training at all. But the moment you try to play that same song, suddenly your brain, your hands, your sense of taste all seem to be arguing with each other. That's not an accident, because music is doing something very unusual. In fact, it's doing something that almost nothing else we do as human beings is required to do. Today's episode is about the 3 domains of music. And by the time we're done, you're going to understand why music feels the way it does, why some students struggle with it, and why, if it's taught correctly, becomes one of the most powerful forms of learning that we have. Now first, let's talk about the 3 domains. Let's begin with a framework that comes straight out of education theory. Any meaningful human activity tends to fall into one or more of 3 domains. The first one is the cognitive domain. That's something using your brain. It's thinking, understanding, processing information. And then there's the psychomotor domain, and that's something that uses your body. It's physical movement, coordination, stuff like that. And then there's the aesthetic domain, and that's using your heart, perception of beauty, taste, emotion, those kinds of things. Now, most everything we do leans heavily toward one of these 3 things. Reading a book, hey, that's mostly cognitive. All you have to do is think to read a book. Playing a sport, well, that's largely psychomotor. Looking at a painting, well, that's primarily aesthetic. But music? Music refuses to stay in its own lane. Music demands all 3 domains at the same time. And that's where things start to get interesting. Think about what happens when someone performs music. Even at a basic level. They're reading notation or remembering structure, that's cognitive. They're physically producing sound somehow, that's psychomotor. And they're judging tone, balance, phrasing, expression, and that's aesthetic. And you don't get to do them one at a time. You have to do all 3 simultaneously, which is why a beginning band student can look like they're solving a math problem while patting their head while trying to emotionally process a breakup all at once. Music is not just difficult, it is layered with difficulty. Now, to understand how unusual that is, it helps to compare it to other activities. Like, let's take baseball, for example. A batter must recognize the pitch coming towards him. He must read the defense and make a decision. That's cognitive. He must also coordinate his body, swing the bat, and make contact. That's psychomotor. Now, could there be an aesthetic moment in baseball? Well, sure. He might notice the way the sunlight catches the stitching on a fast-moving ball headed towards his head at 95 miles an hour. But that aesthetic experience is not required to play the game. It's optional, which also incidentally describes what it feels like to watch the Braves exit the playoffs earlier than expected. Now, music doesn't work that way. You can combine thinking and movement and produce sound, but without aesthetic judgment, it's not music. It's just a video game. Now, to really understand how unusual this is, it helps to compare music to other activities that almost hit all 3 domains, but don't quite get there. Take writing, for example. Writing clearly involves thought. There's organization, there's structure, there's language, and it can absolutely have aesthetic beauty as well. A beautifully crafted sentence has rhythm, balance, and kind of a musicality to it. But physically? Well, writing is very low demand. Once you've learned how to form letters or type, the body is really no longer the challenge here. The hand is not struggling the way a trumpet player's embouchure struggles. So writing sits primarily in the cognitive and aesthetic domains, but not strongly in the psychomotor. What about painting? Now, painting absolutely involves physical control. There's brush technique, pressure, motion, and it also involves aesthetic judgment. But cognitively, it's often less structured in real time. I mean, you're not decoding symbolic language at speed the way a musician reads notation. I mean, you can paint all day long and just let your mind wander without really thinking about anything. So painting leans towards psychomotor and aesthetic with less immediate cognitive demand. Hey, what about chess? Oh, chess is almost entirely cognitive. I mean, strategy, foresight, calculation. There's virtually no physical challenge to play chess, and while there might be an elegance and a brilliant move, it's really not aesthetic in the sensory sense. And then there's listening to music. I mean, listening to music is deeply aesthetic. It engages emotion and taste and perception, but requires no physical execution and very little active problem solving. So here's the point. Lots of activities touch two domains. Very few in human culture demand all three, and music is one of them. Every time. But music is not entirely unique. I mean, it's rare, but it's not entirely unique. There are a handful of other activities that require all three domains. The most obvious one, I think, is dancing. Dancers must remember choreography, track rhythm, and navigate space. That's cognitive. Dancers must also execute coordinated movement with their bodies. That's psychomotor. And they must express something. That's aesthetic. Without that last element, dancing doesn't look human and it looks more mechanical. Acting works the same way. I mean, actors have to memorize their lines and they have to remember their cues. That's cognitive. They use their voice, their bodies with gestures, and they have to remember the blocking, and that's psychomotor. And then they have to convey a character with emotional truth and connection to the audience. That's aesthetic. You remove any one of those things and the whole performance collapses. Now, I really can't call myself a Southerner without recognizing that cooking also belongs in this category. Cooking is often misunderstood as just following a recipe, but anybody who's spent time at a real kitchen knows better. Yeah, there's recognition, there's ratios, timing, substitutions, sequencing, those type of cognitive skills. There's also psychomotor skill involved with cooking. There's knife work, heat control, texture handling, and working with appliances and other tools. But the defining feature in cooking is aesthetic judgment. There's taste, smell, balance, intuition. When your grandmother said just a pinch, that wasn't a measurement. That was judgment. So you can extend this framework even further. Now, martial arts, particularly forms like Tai Chi or kata-based systems, operate this way at higher levels. There is sequencing and awareness in martial arts, that's cognitive. There's precision and control, that's psychomotor. And then something harder to define. There's flow, there's grace, there's economy of motion. And in some traditions, forms are explicitly described as a performance. Good grief, even gardening begins to approach this model. With gardening, there is cognition. You have to know about soil and sun and spacing and timing and watering. Then there's physical execution. You have to plant, work with the dirt, prune, handle things. But there's also aesthetic judgment. You have to balance things. There's symmetry, texture, color, fragrance. A good garden doesn't just grow, it feels right. It comes alive. Now, where gardening falls short in this comparison is that those domains are distributed over time. They're not simultaneously. I mean, you can think first, then act, then evaluate. Music doesn't allow that separation. In music, all three must occur simultaneously, continuously, without interruption. Remove cognition from music and the structure disappears. Remove the physical execution, there's no medium. Remove the aesthetic judgment, and what you just get is mechanical noise. Music does not tolerate separation of the three domains. Now, if you line these activities up, music, dance, acting, cooking, and gardening, you can see a pattern that emerges. The most complete human activities that we do are the ones that require mind, body, and judgment, all working together. The only difference is tempo. Music, dance, and acting operate in seconds. Cooking unfolds over minutes or hours, and gardening unfolds over weeks or months. It's the same structure, just a different time scale. You're listening to The Tom Daniels Show. We'll be right back.
What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show.
Welcome back to the Tom Daniels Show. I've got to tell you something about this episode. When I gave the script to Mary Mac, I listened to them discuss what to do, and it was Demelza who came up with the idea of trying to somehow blend sacred harp harmonies with a kind of ethereal atmosphere, and good grief, they nailed it. Mary Mac is the world's most perfect band. Now, what about some other comparisons to what we've been talking about? Certain sports, I think particularly tennis, golf, and basketball, can begin to approach this three-domain model. Not because of rules or structure, but because of something that athletes call feel. A golf swing, a tennis backhand, or a sweet jump shot. All are often described using musical language. They have tempo, they have rhythm, they have smoothness. That's not an accident. I could also make a case for conducting music, except, of course, that nobody likes conductors, so why would I even waste the time? You ever heard this old joke? A musician calls the symphony office and asks to speak to the conductor. "Oh, I'm sorry," the receptionist says. "He's dead." The musician calls back. Same answer. He calls again, and again, and again. And finally, the receptionist asks, "Why do you keep calling?" And he says, "I'd just like to hear you say it." My thanks to Joseph Messenger at Iowa State University for that little gem. And now, the final distinction, performance. There's one final distinction that clarifies everything here, and that's live performance. Writing and painting are typically private acts that produce fixed objects. Nobody asks Mark Twain to rewrite Tom Sawyer. Nobody ever asked Van Gogh to repaint Starry Night. But musicians, dancers, and actors are often asked to perform the same material repeatedly. And every time, it's going to be slightly different because it's happening in real time. So why do students struggle with music? Now, if you've ever taught music or tried to learn it, it explains a lot. Because when a student struggles, the problem isn't always where we think it is. A student might understand the music cognitively, but lack the physical coordination to execute it. Or they might be able to play the notes, but have no sense of phrasing or tone, no aesthetic awareness. Or, and this is very common, they're trying to process all three domains at once and just get overwhelmed. And when that happens, everything breaks down. Not because they're incapable, but because we've handed them a three-part problem and expected a one-part solution. So what does this mean for learning music? It means we have to be very intentional. Because if music requires three domains, then good teaching has to address all three deliberately and yet separately. Sometimes a music teacher will only isolate the cognitive. They'll say, let's count the rhythm, let's read the lines and spaces, let's analyze the form. Sometimes a music teacher will only isolate the psychomotor. Let's work on your finger work. Let's fix your embouchure. Let's regulate your breathing. And sometimes a music teacher will only isolate the aesthetic. What should this sound like? What's the emotion here? What feel are you aiming for? Because if you try to develop all three at full speed all the time, students don't integrate. They just short circuit. And then teachers or parents say, you know what, that kid just doesn't have it. When in reality, we never really gave them a way to build it. So as a music teacher, I always made a conscious effort to incorporate as many domains as possible without overloading a student's brain. I rarely, if ever, asked a student to repeat something just to get the pitch correct. I always made sure they included feeling and emotion, even while drilling. I couldn't even guess how many times I told a band, I don't care if the notes are wrong, but I do care that it feels right. And I never asked a student to play something more than 3 times just to fix a mistake. I mean, after that, the repetitions are meaningless and, just move on when you get to that point. But here's the payoff. Because music engages all 3 domains simultaneously, it does something very few activities can do. It integrates the human being. It connects thought, action, and perception into a single experience. And when that happens, when a student finally gets all 3 working together, it doesn't just sound better, it feels different. That's the moment when music stops being mechanical and becomes music. That's the moment when it clicks. So what makes music different? I mean, it's not complexity, it's not beauty, it's not even tradition. It's everything being simultaneous. Music is one of the few human activities where thinking, doing, and feeling cannot be separated without destroying the activity. In many fields, you can think first and act later, or act without feeling. Music does not allow that, and that is precisely why it feels so complete when it's done well. So the next time you hear someone say that music is just an extra, or just an elective, or just something we do for fun, remember this. Music is one of the few things we teach that requires the full human system to operate at once. Mind, body, and soul, all working together. And that's not just education, that's formation. Thanks for joining me today on the Tom Daniels Show. If you've ever struggled to learn music or struggled to teach it, this framework might just explain why. And if it helped you see music a little more clearly, I'd love for you to share the episode, leave a review, and keep the conversation going. This has been the Tom Daniels Show. Keep listening. Keep learning.
Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniels Show. Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniels Show. Take a break from your usual routine and tune in to the Tom Daniels Show. You'll discover the world of melodies and stories that you might not know. Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniels Show. Keep listening, keep learning. The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show. What are you waiting for? The Tom Daniels Show.